My name is Keesha Middlemass. I'd like to thank Todd Clear for the invitation, but also clear up any misconceptions. I provide no services. I'm on faculty. I work in Hill Hall. I don't actually run any programs, but today I wanted to talk about reentry after parole and probation. That whole idea of individuals looking at their release date. I just have to be good until my release date, and then I'll be fine. Like magically, all those programs that they've been through will come together on release date, and they're good. So some background, if I talk differently than criminologists or sociologists. I'm a classically trained political scientist, so I like public policies and laws. I was going to do a whole set of dry laws today, and I'm like, people fall asleep, my students do, so I need to use some of my data that I've got available and bring the individual voices of women who are either re-entering or have finished and are released and are still re-entering, and mainly because of public policies. Re-entry is never done. So collateral consequences, we're familiar with the terms. I'm going to today specifically focus on housing and employment. They seem to, in my opinion, at least be codependent. What's more important, a place to live so I can focus on getting a job, or a job to pay rent, and then the sort of 1A, 1B, but then two, really important part is education and vocational training. But education and vocational training is a 3, 6, or 12-month commitment. Housing now, like we can't wait till next week or until I finish a program. Employment now, because I still have to pay for food, I have to pay for the bus, I need access to money for a host of reasons for women. So my perspective is that a felony conviction is forever. We have a system in which the government counts people and tracks them when they're in the system, and now we have public and private databases who manage individuals once they're released. It's the felony conviction that follows people. Individuals can become an ex-prisoner, an ex-parolee. You rarely hear the term ex-felon used correctly. The felony conviction follows individuals. In some states, you need a gubernatorial pardon to remove the felony conviction permanently from those public databases, which are increasing all the time. With the actual conviction, my argument is that people are disabled. You think disabled? What is the definition of disability? A disability is a temporary or permanent physical, mental, or emotional condition. This condition can make it difficult for a person to do activities such as walking, climbing stairs, dressing, bathing, learning, or remembering. This condition can also impede a person from being able to go outside the home alone, go to school, or go to work. I'm not saying felons are disabled in this sense, but if you think about a simple conception, I can't walk up the stairs because I'm disabled, the same idea applies to individuals with a felony conviction. They can't re-enter because of public policies that actually restrict them. So you think about social disability theory, sorry, I am an academic. It illustrates a simple idea about a complex process. Social disability, it's the body that is the mechanism in which we group people. Disability manifests in not being able to participate in society. It's barriers within the structures of society. So you think about stairs or being on the subway and the elevator's out and you've got a large package and you really just don't want to carry it up the stairs. Individuals with a felony conviction have this disability, but they've also then got the stigma that the databases make sure people know when you apply for a job, check the box or you're called a liar, you can be unemployed basically for being truthful and honest. And that then becomes a conversation about public policies. The last 4 bullet points are the important part. So public policies deny benefits. They deny it based on a felony conviction. But when you think about reentry and gender differences in public policy, we're creating a social context of reentry that's different for women. We're creating cultural contact differences where we do not consider them in public policies, or at least we don't consider those cultural contact differences in public policies. We being society, we elect legislators that write these laws, we are responsible, that we create economic segregation, the idea of a public institution like Rutgers allowing you to get your master's in social work, but the state won't let you be a licensed social worker. We have nursing programs that will allow you to go through the program and take your tuition until the internship component, and then they're like, oh, no, you have a felony conviction. You can't be in the healthcare field. We don't think about those things, so we actually create economic segregation. And then there's different needs of women, generally mothers. So let me talk first about housing. You hear from service providers, first housing. It's a common mantra. We're really familiar with federal laws, one strike, you're out. But what we don't talk about, or what gets lost in the conversation, is that local public housing authorities can use reasonable factors to allow people to actually get public housing. Rehabilitation, how long since the conviction, efforts of going to school or being in school, being employed. They can use reasonable factors and go get over one strike, you're out. But local public housing authorities usually use it as a blanket. The felony conviction is a blanket denial. There are 1, 3, and 5 year waiting periods for different types of drug convictions. But after 5 years, if you have not recidivated, if you have successfully re-entered based on how we define re-entry, arrest or not arrested, you actually can get public housing. But because it's implemented at the local level, oftentimes the felony conviction becomes it and all, and like New Jersey, the federal government states extra power, and New Jersey uses it as a blanket exclusion. I'm not saying there are not exceptions, but if you show up and you check the box that you got a felony conviction, most local public housing authorities will give you the runaround and not actually allow you to prove that you've got reasonable factors to show that you'd actually be a good tenant. They just, no. So what do I have to share with you today is in-depth interviews. I do volunteer at nonprofit service providers here in Newark and in New York, and I'll share some of the stories of the women. And collectively, I mean, it's a very small number, 5, 6 that I'll share with you today. Collectively, though, the women that I talk to, they want to make an honest effort not to go back. They don't necessarily use the positive, I want to go forward, but they're very clear on not wanting to go back. So what does that look like? Eulette, she's a 29-year-old single mother. She has her physical therapy occupational license. She got it prior to her felony conviction. The state won't renew it. She was convicted in 2002. She only spent 28 days in jail. She was given 3 years probation, which she completed successfully. She's had no legal trouble since the arrest and release. And according to our data, she's a success story. From her perspective, however, in reference to housing, I get denied. I mean, they say come back, but look, I can't get Section 8. They must want us to be homeless. Makes no sense. Her unstable housing situation, because she now has to make compromises. She can't get public housing. She can't get steady job. So what does she do? She stays with her kid's father. In her own words, our stuff is shaky. That's how she describes her relationship. It's all struggle because of the job, but I need a place for my kids to sleep and put my stuff, you know. So she's making compromises, knowing it's unstable. Destiny, 21 years old, working on getting her GED. She was convicted in 2009 of assault. She's currently on parole. My mom's is always on me to get a job. She don't know how hard with a record and all. I be trying, but why bother? No one wants me. She's gonna put me out soon. She's now compromising her relationship with her mother because she can't get a job. If her mom does put her out, homelessness or making compromised choices in terms of how she is going to stay on track to complete parole. In terms of employment, I'm good. In terms of employment, so securing a stable and legal source of income is critical. We know that. The power to license and regulate industries, however, is a state function. If Washington State is one example, felony conviction will permanently prohibit someone from being licensed, contracted, or authorized to work in several different industries. I mentioned earlier healthcare and social work, but it's endless, the number of areas in which individuals cannot work, even if they take the school, go to school, take the license, pass the test. The state will not license them. Katrina, 46 years old, married, 3 kids over the age of 18, so she does not have minor children, which changes the equation. She completed 1 year in college and has several years work experience. She spent time in state and federal institutions for a variety of drug charges. Basically, following her husband is in the military, so it seemed she served time where he was stationed. I'm not saying there is a direct correlation, but there was a strong indication that that was problematic to her dealing with her drug recovery. I want to work, just need an opportunity. I don't have a job, but need one to get myself right. Katrina chooses not to live with her husband. She's still legally married, but she chooses not to stay with her husband because she wants to get herself right, but now can't get a job. So she's now going to make compromises. Do I go back to a marriage that I'm extremely unhappy with, or do I continue to do temporary shelters and occasionally homeless? Yulette, as I mentioned before, she has a license. You can't get no job because of your record. I've been a productive citizen, taking care of my kids, no drugs, and I got nothing. That's her sentiment. She's got nothing, and she's trying, but can't get ahead. Nicole. Nicole is 22 years old. She's currently pregnant with her second child. She is the primary caregiver to her 3-year-old toddler. She's living with her boyfriend. She's working on getting her GED, but has no health care, working under the table at a grocery store. She has 3 years parole for assault. She's looked into programs, but has little idea what to do when the baby comes. Collectively, with women in reentry, I've noticed, and people have talked about, is the lack of resources. Is not the collective resources, but the personal resources. So that public policies assume the family will provide stable housing. Public policies assume jobs will be available. Public policies assume family and intimate relationships are healthy on one hand, but then they restrict individuals using the felony conviction on the other. So the reality of reentering, Yulette can't find steady employment, so stays in her current shaky relationship because he is providing housing. Destiny can't find a job, dependent on her mom, which increases the likelihood she'll be homeless because of the friction between her and her mother. Katrina wants to work but is discouraged, increases the likelihood that she'll abuse drugs again. Nicole is working under the table, so the abuses that could potentially happen just with that situation, let alone that she's pregnant. So she talks a good game about her relationship, but the sense is that there's stress all around her. You can see the level of stress when she's walking around. Dolores sums up everything really well. I served 55 months, I came out, had nothing. Nothing. And I had to report and pee and find a job with nothing. How they expect us to stay out? Back to those 4 bullet points I mentioned were earlier, that there is evidence that there are gender differences and they matter significantly. Social context, survival, and struggling to make ends meet become a way of life. It's not a situation that's temporary. It now becomes a way of life. You think about cultural expectations, Black women are expected to hold down their man, which increases their stress level. But the felony conviction creates stigma, so they can't get legal work, and then the cycle continues of that idea of struggle and survival. Unemployment and at least the use of laws to deny licenses creates economic segregation, and then children change everything. Women are motivated when they've got young kids. They're motivated to make good choices, but when they can't find employment or they can't find housing, what are those choices that then reinforce their struggle, and you've got a cycle. So my small policy suggestions: change or eliminate the waiting periods on access to public housing for women and mothers. Particularly make gender an affirmative positive for public housing. Provide gender-only housing options. I know that might be radical in this idea that we've got dorms where girls and, well, young men and women can room together and share bathrooms. I want to revert back to the idea that there could be gender-only housing options. We could eliminate the felony conviction from licensing requirements, or at the very least, transfer money from corrections, now that the population is decreasing, to reentry programs that addresses licensing issues in a way that actually would have a benefit for individuals, their kids, the larger community. Thank you.